Hey, eBay sellers, it's Suzanne A. Wells, and welcome back for another episode. And today is December 31st, 2017. On New Year's Eve day, for the past 3 or 4 years, I have put a post on my blog about 5 things I learned to sell that year. So this year, I'm doing it a little bit differently with top 5 ways I improved my eBay business this year. And these are things that hopefully you can learn from and might help you as well. New Year's Eve, I always look back at the year and what I accomplished personally, professionally, in every aspect of my life, just to look at what I did that year, and not to beat myself up over things that didn't happen, but to look at every experience to see how I can improve myself from what I learned. So hopefully some of these experiences will help you and improve your business so you can hit the ground running in 2018, which is tomorrow. So, um, if we look back at my blog in 2014, this is when I started this kind of year end review. And I just wanted to show you these in case you haven't read my blog or didn't see these before. And it's just a good way to look at what has evolved, how things have changed, because that's one thing about eBay, as in life. Things are going to change, things are going to evolve. If you've been doing this business for at least a year, it's probably very different than it was this time last year. Some things have changed, and that's how you're going to stay. So, on my 5 new things I learned to sell on eBay in 2014, the first item brand was Vineyard Vines. And so I show this screenshot of my sale, Vineyard Vines Alpha Chi Omega sorority tote bag, which I do have a video on selling sorority themed items, which have done well for me in the past. Also, this Vineyard Vines Shep shirt that I bought for $4 at a thrift store. It sold for $69.97. And a Vineyard Vines tie that was $1 at a thrift store and it sold for $62. Now, again, this was back in 2014, so the market was very different. There wasn't as much of this stuff on eBay and you could get higher prices. So now things are a little different. Another item I learned to sell in that year was Granny Square Afghans. And I always thought these were like, not so pretty, not not so great, but they do take a lot of skill and time to make them. So some people love them, and they're kind of nostalgic. They remind you of years gone by when your mom or grandma would actually make these. So I was big into those this year. So here's 2 sales from that year. One of these was $10 at an estate sale and it sold for $79.97. And another one was $2 at a thrift store and it sold for $64.97. And I remember this first one here, I was actually at my sister's house swimming in her pool, and it was it says July 16th. And I heard my phone ka-ching, and so I got out of the pool and went over there and looked at it, and I just thought, "Ah, this is what eBay is all about. I'm just taking the day off. I'm in a swimming pool, relaxing, just having a great time, and I'm making money." And I just was like, this is just the way to do it. um, Another thing I learned to sell that year was completed needlework. I really got into that. So here are some examples of cross stitch items and needlepoint that I found. One was this airborne parachute guy. It was $1.29 at Goodwill. It sold for $27. This was a folk art sampler for $3 at a church sale. It sold for $29.97. And then this vintage fisherman needlepoint, which I have talked about in my opposite of a haul videos, was $3 at a garage sale and it sold for $45. So you're just constantly learning new things. That year I also was helping the Humane Society with their thrift store, selling their stuff on eBay, and I learned about these Tonner dolls. A doll collector donated these items to the thrift store to raise money for the animals. So that was a new experience for me, and I learned all about those. And then finally, comfort shoes. This is when I really got into learning about shoes, and not just the high fashion dressy ones, but the utilitarian comfort type shoes. So I show here a pair of Birkenstocks shoes that I got for $6 at Goodwill. They sold for $49.97 plus shipping. Some SAS tripod sandals that were $2 at a thrift store and sold for $35 plus shipping. And then Finn Comfort, which were $2 at a thrift store and sold for $55 plus shipping. So then we move on to 2015, and that was the year where I sold my house and I was kind of in limbo. So I moved in with family for a little while, and that turned out to be a really stressful situation. As an almost 50-year-old person moving back in with your parents, even temporarily, just why I regrouped and figured out what I wanted to do. I actually took on a full-time job for a few months just to see if I was missing out on anything in the real world, which I learned I was not. Um, so I still kept up with eBay during all of that. So some things I learned to sell that year, I really got into anthropology and learned all of their well, not all of them, many of their sub brands. I really studied that and tried to learn it. So I'm just showing you here some sales of different anthropology sub brands that I learned. And if you want to learn more about that, just Google anthropology sub brands or go to the anthropology site, and they have an entire list in alphabetical order of all of their sub brands that you can learn. I don't recommend just trying to learn all of this. I recommend when you are out thrifting and you feel something high quality and it looks like it could be an anthropology brand, that's when you want to look it up and see if it is, because there's just no way you can learn all of these. Even people who work there can't keep up with it. So that's just a resource you might be able to use. Okay, that year I also had some experience with pens with no ink. People collect fountain pens for various reasons, whether it's the advertising, the tips, or the brands that no longer exist. So you can find these at estate sales, in the home and office section. You might be able to also see them in thrift stores, in those bagged up lots of things they sell. But here I'm showing one lot was $5 at, I think it was at a thrift store. It was in the case up front. It sold for $39.97. Another lot was $5. It was just like a grab bag, and that sold for $45. And then just one pen by itself. Let's see, I can't tell what that. I think it's a watermark or water something. I can't remember the name, and I can't see it because it's too small. It's $7 at a thrift store, and it sold for $79.97. So I like small things that are easy to ship, and pens are definitely that. I also learned about the Michael Simon brand, and I have a video on that brand if you want more information. This is a designer brand, and all the sweaters are just kind of like crazy, like storybook knits and design options and barrack. Um, so I sold several things that year. A Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer sweater was $2 at a thrift store, and it sold for $39.97 in June. A pair of Santa Claus sequined embroidered clogs, like I'm not sure if they were like bedroom slippers or just casual shoes. They were $2 at a thrift store and sold for $35. And then another Michael Simon color block sequin sweater that was $2 and sold for 36. So that is a good brand to check out. And they're usually very colorful, bright, gaudy. They jump off the rack at you, so they're easy to find. I also got really into Lucky brand. Most people know this brand for its denim, but they also make sportswear, outerwear, and t-shirts. So here's several items that I bought for the The tops were $2 and they sold for around 30, and then a nice embroidered jacket that was $7 at Goodwill and sold for $40. And finally, that year I talked about random stuff that just looked interesting. So I have all kinds of weird things here. One is a lot of just, uh, it's like old tools and pieces, hammer heads and, rusty old things that just look like they came out of somebody's garage. It was $2 at an estate sale. I took a best offer of 33. And then a bundle me, which is a like a car seat or stroller liner sleeping bag type thing, was $1 at a thrift store. I sold that for 34.97. I found a cookie. What's the thing called? It's like the salad shooter, but it's the cookie thing that uh, the gun that makes the different kind of cookies, cookie press. Um, $3 at a thrift store. It was in the original vintage box, and it sold the week of Christmas for 44.97. And then an ashtray that was $1, and it sold for 19.97. So just a wide variety of different things. Then we move on to 2016, and some things I learned about last year was definitely snow globes. I've got a video about that, and I sold several more of those this year. So I'm really glad that I ventured out into that world because I was always kind of leery of shipping them. But I just shipped one the week before Christmas and got positive feedback. It got there just fine. It wasn't broken, and they loved it. And it was that one was $4 and it sold for $98, I think, plus shipping. Also, I learned to sell, or I experimented with rugs. This was another category I hadn't really looked at, but they're pretty easy to find and really easy to ship. You just roll them up and kind of cover them with poly mailer material so that it doesn't rip. You can even use the heavy black trash bags and just tape that on there really well and just stick your label on there. So here is one rug. It's called I think it's pronounced Capel, Capel, and it was $6, and it sold for 129.97 and was shipped to Montana. And then another one I found at Goodwill for $3 sold for 29.97. So the only thing with rugs is they're really heavy if they're bigger. And now that I live on a fourth floor apartment, I'm just not so into those anymore because they're a little bit heavy to bring up here and then have to, um, you know, deal with them. I get USPS mail pickup here, but I still have to carry the stuff up. So when you're carrying, a 50-pound rug up 4 flights of stairs, and I kind of am not real excited about that. But anyway, something that you might want to look into if you have not tried those. Also, I learned about Cavu bags. These are the sling bags that you see kind of everywhere now. Um, so look for these in the tote bags and the purses and the backpack sections. Sometimes they're shoved in there. This is one that I got for $3 at Goodwill and it sold for $59.97. And then I also delved into tennis dresses. Apparently, if the dress is worn by a tennis star in a certain tournament, it can go for a lot on eBay. So these were two that I sold. One was a Maria Sharapova dress that was $6 at Goodwill, and I sold it for 60. And then another one that also was Maria Sharapova, $6 at Goodwill, took a best offer of 70. So if you do the research and realize, find out that the dress you have is worn by a famous tennis player, someone who's currently ranked very high, then you could get more money for that item. But you have to figure that out and Google it and all that kind of stuff. Finally, hats. The magic here is how cheap you can get them. So Goodwill's prices on hats are not low enough to turn a profit. They usually want about $4. So I look for these at other thrift stores or garage sales. And I just look for interesting logos, um, cool looking things that are unusual. So the three I show here, um, one is King Cobra, which I think is a golf brand. I thought it was beer, but it's golf. And then King Ropes, which is out of Wyoming, and apparently that's a big. Um, I'm not sure if it's just one store or it's a brand or what it is, but that one sold really fast. And then one that is the Weather Channel, and that's here in Atlanta. So um, I see Weather Channel stuff all the time, and that's a good logo to sell because um, people just like to wear that and act like they know the weather, I guess. Um, okay, so back to 2017, things that I learned that improved my business. First thing is sourcing inventory at consignment clearance sales. I have another video about this, so you can watch that, but the concept here is to check out your local consignment stores, not just Plato's Closet and the national chains, but all the little ones too, because they have limited floor space and they really only want what's in season because that's what sells for them right then. So they're constantly clearancing out of season stuff and getting ready for the next season. So, they don't wait till spring is actually here to start putting spring stuff in the store. They want to be ahead of the game. So your consignment stores may have clearance at either always in the store on a clearance rack or certain days of the month or quarterly or however they do it where they clearance out the old stuff. And since you're selling on eBay, it doesn't matter what season it is. You can sell that year round. So I have found a few around me that I go to regularly. One has clearance every other week. And the oldest stuff, it's all color coded. So the oldest stuff is 80% off. So it's just incredible bargains. And then another one has a clearance every quarter. And they have this whole like wine and cheese party thing. And then the stuff is clearance based on how old it is in the store. But you can get some really good stuff at consignment stores because they have limited floor space. So they have to keep the most current stuff on the floor or what's the upcoming season rather than just keeping everything they get because they're just going to run out of room. So check out my video on that. I've got the link at the top for you so you can learn more about that strategy. Okay, number 2, go back and improve bad photos. Nobody wants to rework their listings, but this can definitely benefit you. And yes, we all have them. Old listings with not so great photos. This year I updated my backdrop finally and got a new phone. I had an iPhone 5, which was, I think it was 4 years old. And every time we would get an upgrade, I would give it to one of my kids because like my son needs a good phone for all his stuff in college is done through email and they've got to have a phone, a great phone. And then my daughter is on the family plan too, and she does the eBay business, and so being the mom, you always give the good stuff to your kids. So I was, taking these pictures with a pretty crappy phone. And I know that's a terrible example to set for all of you, but I'm just like everybody else. We have to make decisions on what we spend our money on. And so this year I finally got a new phone. And wow, what a difference in the pictures. I'm going to show you in just a second. But it really benefits you to go back and rework old listings as long as you would still buy and resell that same thing today, which was the case for me. I would look at this picture and say, this is a great item. I am just not doing this justice. I need to fix this. And if I was at a thrift store and this was $2, yes, I would still buy this and sell it today. So I need to maximize what I've already done so that it can sell because you've already done the work. So here is one item. This is a Chico's blouse, and you can tell in the picture it's kind of yellowish and it's just not not a super great picture. And this is the picture after my new backdrop and my new phone. And here are the two pictures side by side, and you can just tell a huge difference. This is a crepe, CREPE fabric. It's 100% silk, but it's that crepe fabric that is supposed to look kind of wrinkly. And you can tell on the old picture that you just don't see the detail that you see on the new picture. So part of this is better lighting, a different backdrop, and definitely a better phone that takes better pictures. So I'm not saying everybody needs to run out and buy a new phone or a new camera, but just be mindful that, this kind of crept up on me. I didn't realize how bad my pictures were until I got my new phone and started taking pictures. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. These pictures are fantastic. And my daughter, Melanie, is like, yeah, it's because you've been using that crappy phone. So, it's like it just gradually creeps up on you, and you don't realize that it's time for a change. And I guess that's an old people thing. But here's another example. This is a blue Ann Taylor dress, and you can see, I've got a little bit of a shadow there, and it's just not a super vibrant picture. And then here is the updated picture. You can see the dress is just so much more vibrant. It just pops. And here's the two pictures side by side. So I am actually in the process of going through all of my listings on my eBay store and redoing the pictures, and just updating them, because I have all this great inventory, but I can do better with the pictures in the backdrop. So it is worth the time to redo it, I think. And I'm getting sales from this when, I'll fix something, improve the picture, and a couple weeks later it will sell. So it is worth the time. You don't have to spend any more money on more and more inventory. It's just a matter of going back and refreshing, reworking, improving what you've already done. Now, on that same note, the number 3 tip is end listings on good till canceled that have a lot of views and restart them using sell similar. And here's why. Cassini, the eBay search engine, does not like listings that have a lot of views and no sale. It thinks, this listing has been looked at a lot and no one has bought it. So apparently no one wants it. So I'm going to push this listing to the bottom of search and not bother other buyers with clogging up the search results. So the search engine is saying it's been looked at, nobody wants it. I'm not going to show it to anybody else because they're not buying it anyway, and it's going to get pushed down. And I have proof that this works. So I have been sharing my eBay store, Atlanta Golf Shop, online in my marketing since 2007. And I know I get a huge amount of views from people who are not shopping. They are learning and observing. This store is a teaching tool, and I know that. When I started blogging about eBay, I started my YouTube channel like in 2007. I just didn't do much with it until this year, so it's just kind of been there. I've got my Pinterest board. I've done podcasts in the past. I'm all over the place with stuff. And so I have always said, I'm a real seller. Here's my store. You can go look at it. Because when I started doing this, blogging about eBay back in 2007, nobody was really very transparent with what they were doing. They were, there was all this crap on the internet about buy this ebook and be an eBay millionaire, and all these people just talking about how much money eBay could make. And I would ask them, I said, that's fantastic. I want to learn this. What is your store? And they didn't have one. They were just trying to make money on selling information products, most of them. So when I stepped out to start my blog, there really wasn't anything about teaching people eBay. There were some books, but most of the bloggers were just talking about the eBay stock price and the eBay corporate office and the eBay executives and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, that's great, but that is not helping me make money. So I started my blog to give real information to other sellers who could make money. So that's why I put my store out there as a teaching tool to say, I'm a real person just like you. I'm struggling. I want to learn this. Here's my store if you want to go look at it and see that I'm a real seller just like you. So I get that I have a lot of traffic to my store that is just people learning, observing. They're not there really to buy necessarily. So I'm aware of that. But I used to be an avid good till canceled seller. And my sales became stagnant for that reason because I got so many irrelevant views. I would get 600 views on an item in 2 months. And I'm thinking, surely to God, if that's a real buyer, somebody would have bought it by now. So these are just people that are looking, which is fine. That's why I put it out there. So about 4 years ago, I started an additional store, which I do not publicize simply because I want to be a regular seller on eBay just like everybody else. And I'm not trying to hide anything. It's just I have one store that's a teaching tool and one store that's a selling store. And I don't want I want to see what's real in the eBay world. So I have to keep that one private because if I publicize it, it's not going to be an average eBay store like everybody else's. So that's why I started it, so I could have a second store that didn't get all of this irrelevant traffic and affect my metrics. So anyway, good till cancel listings carry the old history with them when they're relisted. And over time, those views just keep stacking up, and that is not great for search placement. So if you see that happening, you need to make some changes. So I routinely have a high amount of views on the listings in my Atlanta Golf Shop store. And when I realized what was happening, I started ending those listings when they had a lot of views and restarting them using Sell Similar on 30 days, or I would just move it over to my other store because, I'm in this to sell things too. I want to sell stuff, but I can't just, I can't deal with all those irrelevant views because, it does hurt you in the end. So it's a trade-off I make, and I'm very aware of that. So I have seen good results with this strategy. So my advice to you, if you want to increase your sales and help your SEO a little bit, which is search engine optimization, if you're doing good till canceled, end those listings if they have 200 or more views. Just do an experiment. I'm not saying end all of them right now. Do a few a day. If you have thousands of listings, this is going to take some time, but do a test sample of maybe 100 listings and see what happens. So you want to end the ones that have 200 or more listings, unless it is a multiple quantity listing. So if you're selling shampoo or soap or some kind of replenishable or something that you have 100 of, and the sales are still actively selling from that listing, then don't do this. This is for things that you just have one of, that is just sitting there, they're stagnant. I'm talking to the thrifters here, the estate sale people. I'm not talking to people who are selling things in quantity, because if that's a different thing. So let me just clarify that again. If you have listings with high views, 200 or more views, and it's just one item, try ending it and do a sell similar on 30 days. Do not do a relist. If you relist it, it's going to carry all that old history with it. And that's what we're trying to get away from, is we're trying to make it look fresh. We're going to refresh that listing. So you need to do a sell similar and not a relist on those items. If you are a good till canceled seller, you may want to rework your listings every 90 days or so, every quarter, to freshen them up, just to give them a bump. I'm sure I'll get a lot of feedback on this suggestion, especially if you have a lot of listings, but I've just seen so much on social media about eBay slow listings, and then when I go in to do my store review or store critique and ask these questions, they'll be like, "Yeah, I've had that item for 3 years and it's been on good till canceled." And I'm like, "Well, you need to freshen it up then because it's just getting pushed down in search. Yeah, it may eventually sell, but if you want to be more aggressive with your business, I just suggest you try this, and it's not going to hurt you to try it. It's just going to take time." Okay, number 4, review the item specifics on listings 6 months old or older. And let me explain why. If your listings are good till canceled or 30 days and you're just renewing them without doing anything to the listing, you need to think about this. eBay is constantly adding more item specifics. So if your listing is old, or it's either good till canceled, or it's 30 days and you just continually do a sell similar so that the view count starts over and you're not checking the item specifics, if eBay has added anything, those sections are going to be blank on your listing. So like, for example, here's an item specifics for a dress, and you can see it's got the brand, size, color, style, pattern, sleeve style, material, occasion, all this kind of stuff. And this was one of my listings that I was refreshing, and so like dress length is blank, occasion is blank, and there could be others because eBay is constantly adding to this. So if you don't fill these in, you get pushed lower in search because the search engine likes the most complete listings. It will put those at the top. So if you've got really old listings and eBay is adding the stuff, these sections are going to be blank if those options weren't there when you first started the listing. eBay search sees blank item specifics as missing information. The more complete your listing is, the higher it will appear in search. And that is your objective as a seller, to get up higher in search. So the less complete your listing is, the lower it is in search. So I hope that makes sense. Let me go back over that one more time. eBay sees blank item specifics as missing information. The more complete your listing is, the higher it will appear in search. So if you've got old listings, I would say 6 months old or older, that you have not gone in and checked on your item specifics, and eBay has added things that weren't there when you first created the listing, those sections are going to be blank, and that's hurting you. So again, going back and reworking your listings could benefit you greatly. Okay, and the number 5 tip is I did a lot of research on this as far as where I want to go with my business in the next year. Who do I want to be my customer? Who do I want to market to? I do a lot of research on marketing just because I love it. And I'm just seeing more and more about baby boomers, how they are optimal buyers. And let me just explain that a little bit. So much on the internet is geared toward marketing to millennials. And I think that those of us who are Gen X and baby boomers kind of feel inadequate because, like, we don't know how to market to them. We don't understand them and why they buy things, and half the time, like, what they're buying. So let's talk about people over 55, what I call, the first Gen Xers, and they call them late baby boomers. So they're kind of in that 50 to 60 age group. They account for 40% of total consumer demand. So your late Gen Xers, early baby boomers they're buying a lot of stuff, is the bottom line. And they are the most affluent segment of American society, 77%. So, 3/4 of all assets in the United States are owned by people over the age of 55. So that's the difference in the millennials, is they don't really have the buying power, the spending power. They don't have the years of accumulation and the 401ks that they're now able to cash in and spend, and the Social Security that they're getting, and all of these economic benefits that baby boomers have. The millennials don't have that. They're struggling and trying to pay off their student loans, and they're just getting started. So baby boomers have 5 times the net worth of the average American. Think about that. People over the age of 55 have 5 times the net worth of the average American. That's a lot of money and a lot of assets. So the bottom line is that baby boomers, early Gen Xers, um, have the most disposable income, and that's what you want to look at when you're selling, because you're selling. That's what you're doing on eBay, and you want to look at who is buying, who has the most money, who's the biggest group with the deepest pockets. That's what you want to look at. So here's a little chart that shows the average net worth of different generations. And we can see that millennials way down on the scale here. Gen X has more, young boomers, older boomers have the most. Look at that. Their average net worth is so many times higher than millennials. So yeah, they're all over the advertising, but it's the boomers that have the money. And also, boomers like nostalgia and tradition. So they want to buy those vintage items and collectible items that are out there in the thrift stores that we love to buy and resell. And it's fun because if you're in this generation, Gen X and baby boomer, it's like you're selling to your peers. It's like they get it. You have the same memories. You have had the same life experiences, and you can relate to them. So I'm telling you this because I don't want you guys to feel like, if you're older, that you have to understand this millennial generation and feel like you need to be marketing to them, because you don't. You don't have to know every latest trend that's out there that the millennials are wearing. Millennials are up to age 35. So you don't have to know all that. You can be marketing to your peers. So this is a huge segment of the American consumer base that I don't think a lot of people are talking about as far as eBay is concerned, eBay selling. I see so much on social media about buying all this stuff wholesale and reselling it, and what's the latest greatest thing to buy. And I get that the younger people are very focused on that, but the reality is the boomers are the ones with the money, and they have they have the money. They're very generous. They're buying for not only themselves, but their family. They have the time. They're computer savvy. They have mobile devices they shop on. They have all that stuff going for them, as well as millennials. So don't think that you have to know all the latest, greatest stuff to make money on eBay, because you don't. Also, the baby boomers embrace technology. 80% have a smartphone. 68% have multiple devices. So they've not only got a smartphone, they've got an iPad, which boomers love their iPads. That's a thing. Like, Gen Xers aren't so hot about iPads. It's like, is it a phone? Is it a computer? What is it? Gen Xers like their computer. And I think it's because, in high school, we started learning about computers in the early 80s. And so it's like it's a computer or it's a phone. An iPad is like, what is this hybrid thing? But boomers do love their iPads. I will tell you that. I've worked with enough of them to know that I'll start talking about taking pictures, and they're like, "Oh, I do that on my iPad. Is there an app for that for the iPad?" And it's like, boomers just love their iPads. So if you have one, please comment. Um, and here's one last little statistic for you, and then I'll wrap this up. Generational spending habits by household. You can look here. The most compelling fact on this graph is the lime green color here, where it stands for all other spending. Look how much baby boomers have. That's like disposable income. Millennials don't have as much. Boomers have a lot. Um, and let's see, when it says they spend about the same amount on clothing as millennials. Gen X spends more money on clothing, so but not by far. Um, but that's the biggest difference here is the disposable income for baby boomers and Gen X is much greater than millennials because millennials are younger. They were born in 1981 and on, and they're getting started in life. They're having their kids. They're haven't been at their jobs as long. They don't have retirement money. They're not cashing in on their 401k. They haven't built everything up yet. They're still paying their student loans. They have credit card debt, all that kind of stuff. So just, if you're looking for a direction with your eBay business and like, who should I be selling to? This is just some compelling information that boomers, they have the money and they like to buy the stuff we like to sell. The stuff that's in thrift stores, the vintage stuff, the vintage household stuff, the collectibles, the old postcards, the old t-shirts, stuff they don't make anymore because boomers and Gen Xers like nostalgia. They like remembering when they were in high school, when they were in college, when they were younger, stuff their parents had, and they'll spend their money on that. So, that being said, I will wrap this up. Don't forget about my podcasts on both iTunes and Stitcher. You can just search for my name. So, all of these YouTube videos, the audio will be is being sent over by the feed to excuse me, iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen over and over again anytime you want. And I would appreciate you sharing that with any of your friends that want to learn more about eBay, exactly how to do it, how to make money from home, and building a business they love. So thank you all so much for listening. Would love your comments on any of this. I want to wish everybody a happy, healthy, and prosperous 2018. And be safe out there tonight, and I will see you next year. Have a great day. Bye.